In a world completely different, a world covered by huge ice sheets where the air was freezing and resources were scarce, that was the Ice Ages. An era of extreme cold and frightening silence, where staying alive was a daily challenge. How could humans of that time, with few numbers and limited means, stand against nature's harshness in its strongest form? What skills did they develop, and how did they adapt to an environment that threatened them with hunger and cold every moment? It was not easy. There was no comfort and no outside support. Just searching for food or shelter was a struggle for survival. We will dive deep into that far era. We will explore the survival strategies humans followed, from new hunting methods in frozen lands to building shelters that protected them from the harsh elements, and how the cruel conditions shaped their minds and bodies. For thousands of years during the Ice Ages, large parts of our planet were covered with massive ice sheets, stretching hundreds of miles and reaching kilometers in thickness. These times were not just a long, cold winter, but a complete climate and environment change that forced new challenges on all living beings, including humans. Temperatures were unbelievably low. Winters were long and harsh, while summers were short and weak, barely melting the surface layers of snow. The winds were strong, carrying icy snow grains that whipped the face and pierced any protection. The sky was often gray, reflecting the deep cold of the earth. In this hard environment, plants and animals changed. Thick forests like the ones we know today were rare. In their place were cold tundra plains where moss, lichens, and small shrubs grew. This change in plants directly affected the kinds of animals available for hunting. The large animals that adapted to these conditions became the main source of food and clothing for humans. The woolly mammoth, woolly rhinoceros, ibex, and giant bison roamed these frozen plains. Hunting these huge creatures required great courage, group organization, and deep knowledge of their behavior. Finding liquid water was not easy. Most water was frozen in rivers and lakes or locked inside the ice sheets. To drink, humans had to melt snow or search for springs that had not frozen yet. Every part of life needed double effort just to stay alive. In this frozen, merciless world, humans were only a small piece of nature's fabric. They had to adapt, or they would face extinction. This is the first chapter in the story of human survival against the deadly silence of snow. Searching for food was not the only challenge. Finding safe shelter was also critical to stay alive. Sleeping in the open meant almost certain death from freezing, so our ancestors developed smart strategies to use available resources to build shelters that protected them from the weather. Caves were the natural and easiest shelters. They gave instant protection from wind and snow, and their stone walls kept some relative warmth. For moving groups, searching for suitable caves was a top priority. Inside these caves, humans lit fires to keep warm, cook food, and provide light in the deep darkness. But caves were not everywhere. In wide open plains without rock formations, humans had to build their own shelters. Here, hunting skills became the key not only for food, but also for raw building materials. The woolly mammoth, for example, gave not only meat and fat, but its giant bones were used as frames for shelters. These bone houses were built by planting large mammoth bones in the ground to form a frame, then covering them with thick animal hides. These hides gave excellent insulation against cold and wind. Sometimes stones were placed on top or the edges were buried in the ground to keep stability against snowstorms. These shelters were more than places for sleep. They were centers of social life. Inside them, families gathered, made tools, treated animal hides, and shared stories and knowledge. The fire in these shelters was the heart of existence. It was a symbol of survival against deadly cold. Building such complex shelters shows the intelligence of ancient humans and their ability to adapt to their environment. It was proof of human skill in turning the most dangerous resources into protection, creating safe homes in a world where cold was the biggest threat. In the Ice Age, fire was more than just a way to get warm. It was the main base of human existence and survival in a world wrapped in endless frost. The ability to start and keep fire was the difference between life and death, between survival and silent extinction. Humans learned early how to control fire and use it well. Lighting a fire needed skill and patience. Our ancestors used simple tools like flint stone and marcasite to make sparks, or friction between two pieces of wood to produce enough heat to light dry material. These skills, which may seem simple to us today, were vital knowledge passed from generation to generation. Once fire was lit, it gave priceless warmth inside shelters. Around the dancing flames, families gathered to escape the freezing cold. The warmth was not only physical, but also gave a feeling of safety and peace in a hostile world. It was the bright point in the dark nights of ice. The role of fire was not limited to warmth. It was the base for cooking food, making meat easier to digest and less likely to carry disease. Cooking also allowed extra food to be stored for longer, which was vital in times of scarce resources. Fire helped humans process animal hides, making them softer and better for clothes and covers, giving another layer of protection against the cold. It was also an effective guard against predators. At night, the light of fire scared away wolves, bears, and saber-toothed cats, keeping shelter safe while people slept. Fire also brought people together, strengthening social bonds and group organization. Mastering the use of fire was one of the most important human achievements that allowed Ice Age humans to survive. Fire was the beating heart of every human group. It lit their path, warmed their bodies, and protected their lives against the challenges of the frozen, silent world. Having shelter and fire was not enough for humans to survive the Ice Age. The ability to make tools was what set them apart from other creatures and gave them the upper hand in facing a merciless environment. These tools, made with skill and silence, were the key to getting food, a way of protection, and proof of human thinking progress. At first, stone tools were the base. Our ancestors used complex methods to break flint and other rocks, making sharp spearheads, knives, and scrapers. These were not just random broken stones. They were carefully designed, showing deep knowledge of material properties and how to use them. Sharp blades were necessary to cut meat from large animals, treat their hides, and even shape bones and wood. As skills improved, humans started using other materials found in their icy environment. Bones and ivory from the remains of giant animals were turned into many useful tools. From them, they made fine sewing needles, which were vital for stitching hides into warm, tight clothing. They also made better spearheads and hooks for fishing in rivers or lakes that did not fully freeze. Wood, though rare in some icy regions, was also used to make handles for tools or frames for shelters. The techniques to work with these materials were simple but effective, showing human ability to invent under pressure. These tools were not only to meet basic needs, they expanded hunting abilities. The invention of spears with stone or bone tips allowed humans to target bigger and more dangerous prey from a safe distance. Using hooks and primitive nets helped them add fish to their diet, which was important in some seasons. Tools were proof of human intelligence, a silent victory of thought over nature. They gave humans power to hunt, to build, and to survive in the freezing silence of the Ice Age. In the harsh Ice Age, hunting animals was not just a way to get food. It was a fight for existence that demanded group intelligence, careful planning, and unshaken courage. The woolly mammoth and giant bison were not just prey. They were huge and powerful creatures. Hunting them was deadly risky for humans. Humans did not depend on individual strength. They depended on group cooperation. Human groups worked as one unit, planning and carrying out complex hunts. They studied animal behavior, their migration paths, and their weak points. This shows a deep understanding of their environment. One common strategy was to chase prey until it was exhausted. On open snowy plains, hunters would run after big animals for long distances, using their endurance and teamwork. This exhaustion slowed the animal and made it an easier target for sharp spears or natural traps. Humans also used the land to their advantage. They drove herds toward rocky cliffs, frozen swamps, or natural traps that blocked movement. When animals fell into these places, killing them became easier and safer for the hunters. Spears were not the only weapon. Some discoveries show that humans also used simple traps, pits dug in the ground hidden under snow or leaves. These traps weakened or stopped the animal before the final strike. Big hunts were never just about meat. Every part of the animal was used. Hides for clothes and shelter, bones for tools and building, fat for fuel and light, and even sinews for rope and sewing. This way of life shows an economy built on maximum use of resources in a world where waste could mean death. The ability to hunt these giant creatures shows human mental and social growth. They were no longer just gatherers. They became skilled hunters, able to control their environment and secure survival in the silence of the Ice Age. In an environment where temperatures dropped far below freezing again and again, shelter and fire alone were not enough. Effective. Clothing was a critical need, not a luxury, for humans to survive the Ice Age. Our ancestors mastered the art of turning the hides of giant animals into silent armor against deadly frost. Clothing was not just raw skins wrapped around the body. It was carefully made with high skill, using the fine bone needles we mentioned before. These needles allowed them to stitch hides tightly together and create layered clothes that gave excellent insulation. The main raw materials were the hides of animals they hunted. Woolly mammoths, bears, ibex, and wolves provided thick hides with dense fur, giving natural protection from the cold. But skinning alone was not enough. The hides had to be treated in simple but effective ways to make them soft, water-resistant, and durable. The process included scraping off leftover meat and fat, rubbing the hide with animal fat, or even chewing it to soften it. They also used animal brains or some plants for primitive tanning. Afterward, the hides were dried in the air or over fire, then smoked to resist rot. These complex steps took time and effort, showing how much they valued survival gear. The clothes were made to fit harsh conditions. They were tightly sewn at wrists, ankles, and neck to block the cold. They included hats covering head and ears, thick gloves for hands, and warm insulated shoes to protect feet from freezing. Often, the clothes had 2 or more layers of hides and fur, with the fur side worn inside for extra warmth. The ability to make such advanced clothes was one of the main reasons humans survived the Ice Age. These garments became a second skin, protecting them, allowing them to travel and hunt in deadly cold, and ensuring the survival of their families in the silence of winter. Getting food was never easy for Ice Age humans. They had to develop advanced skills in finding and storing food to survive the long seasons of scarcity and extreme cold. Hunting giant animals gave large amounts of meat, but this food had to be eaten or stored quickly before it spoiled. Without modern cooling methods, our ancestors used simple but effective ways to preserve food. One method was natural freezing. They buried meat in snow or frozen ground to keep it for long periods. They also dried and smoked meat. After cutting it into thin strips, they dried it in the cold, dry air or smoked it over fire inside shelters. These processes removed moisture, stopping bacteria growth and making the meat last much longer. Dried meat was light and easy to carry, perfect for moving groups. Food was not only meat. Even though plants were rare in the tundra, Ice Age humans completed their diet by searching for edible roots, tubers, and berries during warmer seasons. Though these were less abundant, they also caught fish in rivers and lakes that did not fully freeze, using simple hooks or nets. No part of the hunted animal was wasted. Bones were broken to extract marrow, rich in fat and energy, a vital source of calories in a freezing world that demanded huge energy to keep body heat. Animal fat was also used as fuel for light and heat, in addition to being eaten for energy. Food was stored carefully inside shelters or hidden in natural storage places like caves or under snow. These practices show human foresight and planning, not only for today but for the long winter ahead. The art of finding and storing food was one of the main reasons our ancestors survived. It was a silent achievement that tells the story of their ability to adapt in the harshest conditions. Human survival in the Ice Age did not depend only on individual skills. It depended strongly on social organization and the ability to live and work as one group. In a merciless environment, the power of the group was the final shield against extinction, the silent voice of survival. Human groups in that time were small, usually made of several related families, about 20 to 50 people. This size was ideal for moving, searching for resources, and staying safe. Each member had a clear and important role in hunting, gathering food, making clothes, or caring for children and elders. Work division was necessary. Men hunters usually focused on tracking and killing large animals. Women and children often gathered edible plants, caught small fish, treated hides and meat, and made tools and clothing. This cooperation made sure every person's effort helped the group's survival. Sharing knowledge and experience was also vital. The making of tools, hunting methods, and resource locations were all skills passed down orally from generation to generation. Elders, even if weak, were living libraries of wisdom. They gave guidance and advice, helping the group avoid mistakes and survive dangers, whether predators or other human groups. Unity was protection. Shared defense of shelters and joint guarding of resources were basic strategies. There was a deep sense of belonging and solidarity, because one person's survival depended on the survival of the group. These groups were not in complete isolation. There were networks of exchange and contact between different groups, maybe through seasonal meetings to trade goods, share knowledge, or even exchange partners. Such interactions made these societies more flexible and able to adapt. The strength of social organization, cooperation, and work division were decisive factors for human survival. The group was the base of life, giving warmth, safety, and support in a cold, silent world that demanded the highest unity to endure. Despite the hard struggle to survive, Ice Age humans were not only seeking physical safety, they also had a creative spirit that appeared in silent art, drawn on the dark walls of caves, leaving behind a visual legacy telling stories of their life, beliefs, and relation with their world. Cave paintings are the strongest proof of this. Art. In caves like Lascaux in France and Altamira in Spain, our ancestors painted the animals that were central to their lives: mammoths, bison, ibex, and horses. These paintings were often very realistic, showing fine details and lively movement, proving their strong observation skills. The paintings were not just decorations. It is believed they had spiritual or magical purposes. Maybe they were part of hunting rituals to bring luck or ensure success in the chase. Or maybe they were teaching tools, helping new generations learn to recognize animals and their behavior. These silent artworks were like visual libraries, history books for their communities. The tools used by ancient artists were simple but effective. They used colors from minerals like red and yellow ochre, iron oxides, and charcoal. These were mixed with animal fat, water, or plant sap to make pigments. They applied them with fingers, feathers, or by chewing color and blowing it onto the surface. Besides animals, some caves show human handprints, painted or stamped, maybe with personal or spiritual meanings. Art was not only on cave walls. Humans also made small carvings from bones, ivory, or soft stone. These often showed animals or human shapes, like the famous Venus figurines believed to symbolize fertility. Such portable art was part of daily life and shows their sense of beauty. Art, in the Ice Age, was more than a hobby. It was part of survival, a way to express fear and hope in a harsh world. These silent whispers on cave walls tell the story of a human spirit that created even in the darkest times, leaving a cultural legacy lasting thousands of years. Even though there is no direct proof of spoken language from that far time, the complex actions of our ancestors strongly suggest they had some advanced form of communication. Group hunting of mammoths, for example, needed high coordination, careful planning, and quick commands during the chase. Such actions could not be done effectively without a language to share complex ideas. Language was also needed to pass knowledge and experience across generations. How would young people learn the art of making complex stone tools? How would they gain precise knowledge of animal behavior and migration routes? How would they know which plants were edible and which were poisonous? All this required oral teaching, where stories and instructions were shared by parents and elders. But language may not have been only words. Early humans also used nonverbal communication effectively. Gestures, body language, and even complex sounds imitating animals may have played a big role in coordination and showing emotions. Cave art itself can be seen as a form of communication. These drawings were not simple decorations, but carried messages and meanings for the community. Maybe about hunting success, spiritual beliefs, or important events. They were a silent visual language, recording parts of their history. Language also helped with social unity. Storytelling around the fire at night, sharing jokes, or simply daily talk. All of these strengthened group bonds and gave people a sense of belonging and safety in a world that tried to isolate them. The development of language, both spoken and unspoken, was one of the greatest human steps. It was the invisible fabric that tied the group together, allowing them to learn from the past, plan for the future, and face the challenges of the Ice Age with one shared voice. The changing nature of the Ice Age forced humans to move and migrate over long distances in search of resources and survival. These silent journeys across frozen lands were a core part of human survival strategy. The great migrations of animals were the main driver of these human movements. Herds of mammoths or ibex, vital sources of food and materials, moved to find seasonal grazing. Hunters followed these herds, which forced them to cross icy plains, frozen rivers, and snow-covered hills. These journeys were not random. Ancient humans had deep knowledge of the land, where to find water, where natural shelters existed. This knowledge, passed orally through generations, acted as silent maps guiding them on their long travels. They knew when and where to find food and when to move before resources ran out or cold became harsher. Migration also opened chances to discover new lands and expand human settlement. Step by step, humans spread across continents, reaching areas never touched by humans before. This slow, silent spread is what allowed humanity to survive and grow. Even when numbers were small, such trips needed high physical endurance and good group organization. They had to carry tools, hides, stored food, and protect children and elders in extreme conditions. It was a true test of human flexibility and adaptation to change. Many archaeological discoveries, such as trails of stone tools or remains of temporary shelters, show evidence of these movements. They tell the story of human groups moving slowly and carefully step by step to secure survival in a world that forced them to always search for safe land and lasting resources. The ability to migrate and adapt to new environments was a cornerstone of human survival in the Ice Age. These silent journeys across frozen continents guaranteed the continuation of our kind and laid the base for spreading across the whole world. Human survival in the Ice Age did not depend only on intelligence and cultural skills. It also depended on silent biological changes in the body that happened over thousands of years. These slow transformations helped humans endure the extreme cold and hunger better. One of the most important adaptations was in metabolism. In a very cold environment, the body needed huge energy to keep its internal heat. Our ancestors may have developed a better ability to store fat and use it as energy when needed. This gave them both insulation against the cold and an energy reserved during times of food shortage. Body shape may also have changed. People in very cold areas often had fuller bodies and shorter limbs compared to those in hot regions. This shape reduced the surface area exposed to cold compared to body size, which helped keep heat inside and protect vital organs. Adaptations were not only in body shape. The ability of the body to regulate internal temperature may have improved, too. This included involuntary shivering to produce heat, or redirecting blood flow away from the limbs to keep the chest and organs warm. These processes worked without choice and helped survival. There may also have been changes in skin and hair, color, as constant exposure to cold could affect appearance. But the evidence for these biological changes is indirect, based on studying ancient bones and analyzing the genes of people today who descend from those cold regions. These adaptations were not fast or clear like making a tool or building a shelter. They were slow, silent transformations happening over many generations. They show that the human body itself was part of the survival strategy, evolving and adapting to become more resilient against the harshest environments. This slow biological change ensured our species continued through the frozen ice ages. The ice ages did not last forever. After thousands of years of extreme cold and constant struggle, the world's climate began to change slowly, in ways unnoticed by humans of that time. The huge ice sheet started to retreat step by step. Global temperatures rose in a silent but deep shift that opened the way for a new age on Earth. This climate change, which took thousands of years, had massive effects on the environment and life. The frozen plains began to melt. Sea levels rose and new rivers and lakes appeared. Plant life changed again, as forests and shrubs spread where they could not grow during the peak of the Ice Age. As the environment changed, so did animal life. The giant creatures that had dominated the Ice Age, woolly mammoths, woolly rhinoceroses, began to decline in numbers. Some species disappeared completely, maybe because their food sources changed or because of rising human hunting pressure. For humans, this shift was not easy. Adapting to a new environment and losing the giant prey they depended on brought new challenges. They had to develop new hunting strategies, focusing on smaller, more flexible animals, and also search for new plant-based food sources. Human groups began to settle more often, relying on hunting and gathering in fixed regions instead of constant migration. This relative stability opened the way for the first farming communities that would forever change human civilization. The Ice Ages left our planet in silence, but also left behind a great legacy of human resilience. It is proof of mankind's ability to adapt and invent in the harshest conditions. The story of our ancestors' survival in the Ice Age is not just a chapter in history books. It is a lasting reminder of the strength of the human spirit, its ability to endure and grow, even in the darkest times.